All right. Good evening, everybody. If you can just let me know if you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up, please. All right. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Good to be with you all this evening. We will go ahead and join palms as we get started. So just bringing the palms together. And you can repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right, you can put the palms down. Good to be with you all this evening. I always like to start out with a question, just to give us time to settle in and also allow time for people to jump on before we start the meditation practice. So I think, let's see how I can word this. My question for this evening, and maybe you can go into details or not. It really just depends. You could also just keep your answers very simple. But, I would like for you to take a minute, maybe, and explore during this pandemic for the last year, any positive attributes or changes or realizations or lessons. There's a lot of different ways I can ask that question, but any positives that have come into your life, whether it be with habitual patterns and behaviors, but positive changes that have come into your life since we've been dealing with this pandemic the last year. So again, feel free, and if you're new to joining us, welcome. There'll be a chat box somewhere on your screen there, most likely. Feel free to chime in, and you can go into, like I said, as little or as much detail as you like. You could answer yes or no. Share whatever you feel you want to share. But have you had any positive changes in your life during the pandemic, or or have you had any views that have changed? The second part also, have you had any views that have changed, really just about perception and the perspective you've had on your life and the life of those around you, maybe just on life in general. So if you are just joining us and jumping on, welcome. I'd like to start out with a question. So I just kind of threw out there, have you had any positive changes in your life during the pandemic, or any views that have changed? I think it's important to recognize, and as you chime in and share as little or as much as you like, that we've all been faced with so many difficulties and challenges this past year, whether they've hit us immediately or we've um, dealt with other people's loss, friends or family. We've all had different levels and experiences during this pandemic. Um, but I've also found that during times like this, there is space to reflect. And I see somebody already mentioned reflect, Benton. There's opportunity to reflect on a lot that's going on in your life and the world around us. This last year, these last few years have been really powerful, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good or bad way. Just it's been a very heavy year and couple years. So I think during a time that it's so easy to sink into negative thought, negative stories, because there's so much of that that's gone on, not even pandemic related, just issues around social justice and racism specifically, so much hate. So it's so easy to get pulled into such a negative place, and we all need to be aware of these things. I'm definitely not suggesting we ignore it, but I bring this up really just to allow yourself a little bit of time to reflect on any sort of positive changes or uh, realizations you've had. So again, feel free to type in. Let's see. JL says yes. Good. Happy to hear it. Benton, more time to reflect. Appreciate the present. Trying to figure out what is important and being more helpful. Definitely. Amy, I've developed a more consistent practice. Gratefully. Yeah, it's wonderful. It really is a lifesaver. Samir, fantastic question. Thank you. I try. I've spent my life running from stress. The pandemic forced me to face myself and learn to be comfortable at home. The view that change is that home can now be a happy place. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good view to change. Molly, many positive changes, simplified my life, thinking about retirement to pursue other pursuits. Yeah, it's wonderful. Really, I think that one, it really does make you think about how do I want to spend my time? Knowing that life is so fragile. How do I want to spend my time every day? What do I want to pursue with this time that I have? So very good things to think about. Marisa, my care for others has increased, but the places in which that care has not increased are very obvious, which provides a clearer path to being able to change them. Yeah, it's another really good point that, when certain aspects or attributes of our behaviors and our personalities shine and they reflect very clearly, this also means that the other side of those will also be reflected clearly. And it's a very healthy view, healthy ways, which I see you sharing it, to recognize them and to not beat ourselves up over it, but just to recognize them and begin to work on or continue to work on changing them. So at least ways to stay connected more with people in different places, also living more simply and thinking more of purchases are really necessary. I think going out less broke a cycle of spending more. Yeah, definitely. We've been in this lockdown place, physically, mentally, emotionally, maybe for such a long time now that, a lot of people just aren't going anywhere. And you begin to realize how simple life can be. And, when you said that, it really brought up for me just an immediate trigger to my life in a monastery where, I went from having so many things and money and stuff to literally wearing the same thing every single day, having 2 pairs of it, washing clothes on a washboard, going nowhere, no money, no keys, no wallet, no phone, just going nowhere and spending nothing, and yet being so peaceful and happy. So um, an experience like this is really very different, but also creates an opportunity to reflect on what do we really need and what's really necessary. Um, Samir, less commuters has created less pollution and more time for people to reflect instead of in their cars. Yeah, definitely. And Jim, I couldn't see or hold my granddaughter when she was born until we all quarantined and tested negative. I'm learning to cherish moments with people in my life more because of that. Yeah, that's tough. Someone else just shared with me today that she just got to see her 2-year-old granddaughter. And I think it had been at least a year. So, those are these are moments that we take for granted. Absolutely. And we don't know when they're up. So, thanks, Jim, for sharing that. I think when it's, family members, especially grandkids, what's greater than that, right? So, all right. Anything else before we get started and move on here? Just shutting this off, which I thought I did, but okay. So we'll go ahead and get started with the meditation. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. With a practice like this, with everything we just touched on, this is an opportunity now to just appreciate sitting, appreciate breathing, and appreciate allowing everything physically, mentally, emotionally, just to rest for a little bit. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. I will guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with this practice is don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, simply sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day, the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply for all of us, is that every moment of our lives, things happen, we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. I try not to complicate the practice. As far as sitting, I really do practice just sitting. I know there's many different ways and types and approaches to meditation, often with some sort of idea of gaining or something to accomplish or achieve or to do or to not do. And for me, that's why the Zen practice of just sitting and breathing and observing sensation of breath has always been, I've found the most, I didn't want to say beneficial or useful, but just the most applicable practice to my life, because it's the one time that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to accomplish. And all the lines I say, each time with meditation, nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be, everything beautiful exactly as it is, that's referring specifically to just this. At this moment when I'm sitting and breathing, there's nothing else to do. At this moment when I'm sitting and breathing, there's nowhere else to go. And at this moment when I'm sitting and breathing, there's no one else to be. Everything is beautiful just as it is. And I don't think too many people, if anyone, can say that they have many moments in their lives like that. And that's why, for me, this meditation practice has been so beneficial, because it was finally something where there was nothing to do. It wasn't about being better. It wasn't about accomplishing. It wasn't about building. It wasn't about creating. It wasn't about strategizing. It wasn't about doing anything. It was just sitting. So I guess you have to do that. You have to sit. But you could stand. You could lay down. And you have to breathe. But that part kind of happens on its own. So with that, I'll just pause. For those joining us for the first time, welcome. There's a chat box there on your screen. I appreciate everybody sharing what they shared. I'll just open up to questions now. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind that you want to ask or share. And I'll use the rest of the time, the next 20 minutes or so, just to address your thoughts and your questions. So feel free to type them in. I think going back to the question I asked earlier, positive changes or realizations, for me, they're endless. But one of the things that I've just seen how resourceful people are and can be when they're put in situations like this, and how supportive people are and can be when they're put in situations like this. The whole idea behind Buddhist teachings is that we all suffer throughout our days, and so we want to create a life where we suffer less. And a big part of that is helping others. That is the Bodhisattva practice. It is the way to the vow of the Bodhisattvas to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering. So these moments that we've been in, even if you've been locked in your room and very little access to anyone or anything, you've had tremendous opportunities to reach out to people and be there for them. And I think that's a wonderful practice. So it's one of many things that, and I think somebody referenced it earlier a little bit, that we just continue to do. That as we begin to see things, my guess is throughout this year open up more and more, that we don't lose sight of a lot of people who live very much kind of in isolation normally, and how much they may struggle or how many difficulties they may face, and how important it is for us to reach out and be there for other people. So anyways, thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. Making it easy on me tonight, huh? Samir, just a comment. If the pandemic didn't hit, I wouldn't have reconnected with DBT and met all of you wonderful people over this medium from 2,700 miles away. For that, I will be forever grateful. Yeah, it's true. And a lot of you who I know I've mentioned this in the past, and people are on at different times, but when we opened Dharma Bums, end of 2006, in those first couple of years, when we were downtown, Samir was pretty regular down there. So we got to know each other quite well. And then what year did you move? Has it been 10 years since you moved? How long ago did you move? So this opportunity, like he said, it was an opportunity for him to reconnect virtually with us, just kind of fall back into being part of the Sangha. So other thoughts, questions? Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with? Yay, no questions. It's nice that everybody finally has it figured out. I can stop making stuff up, A friend joining me tonight is struggling with people letting her down. Do you have any advice? Thanks, Amy. Yes. So, and Amy, hopefully you prefaced maybe the invite, but I'll share some thoughts and let me finish, because initially they might not sound like the best thoughts, but people will always let us down. That's why I just want to start with that, but please allow me to finish before your friend disconnects. People will always let us down, and they will always let us down because we will always have expectations of others. And one of the greatest things that I've learned through this path and this practice, and I use this expression a lot, but I reached a place really with my life for someone who expected so much of myself for most of my life and set the bar so high of how much I had to achieve and accomplish and be. And then I turned around and I had that same expectation of everyone else around me. For me, it became incredibly helpful to embody this practice of not expecting anything from anyone ever. Now, that sounds very difficult and complicated, I know, and it's not an easy practice, but once we no longer expect anything from anyone, we can no longer be let down. So when I start out by saying that people will always let you down, that is only if you always have expectations of them. If we stop having expectations of others, then they cannot let us down. But here's the thing, and again, especially for somebody who's new, Amy, if your friend is new or new to Buddhist practice doesn't mean that you just, become a doormat and that you stand there physically, mentally, emotionally, and allow people to walk all over you or, abuse you in any way, right? That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is those people that are letting you down, they are struggling just like we are. They have their own challenges, their own difficulties, their own traumas, their own life filled with excuses of things that didn't work and why they didn't work. And so then what happens is then when we go to engage with them, they're bringing their mess of a life into your world. So them letting you down really isn't even about you. It's just their inability to be often kind and compassionate and loving and caring because of the trauma and experiences that they have gone through in their life. But we tend to take it very personally and we say, they let me down, they hurt me. They are hurting. But because they didn't do what we wanted, we then make it about us and say, they let me down. All right. The challenge, as I was starting to say, is that when we are in, there's some situations where it's very easy to just turn and walk away from someone who's letting you down. But when it's certain situations, family members, loved ones, certain relationships, whatever it might be, it's not always so easy to just turn and walk away and say, well, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Right? Sometimes we have to engage in this dynamic. And in that place, that's where the practice of endless compassion, as I was alluding to earlier, is very important. The wisdom is to understand that they are suffering. And the compassion is the practice is to have the compassion for their suffering. And that you understand that their pain and their suffering and them, as you say, or someone would say, is letting you down. Again, it's not about you. But if we find ourselves in a situation where it's incredibly unhealthy, this question, again, obviously, Amy, I don't know the person, I don't know the situation, and I don't even want usually to know specifics, but just as an example, the question often comes up about people in just, committed relationships. And in fact, half the people who come to temple because they're in a relationship that they're struggling with, right? So one half of the relationship is at the Dharma Bum temple, and the other half of the relationship is somewhere else. But either way, there's a struggle going on in this dynamic, in this relationship. So people often ask, how long, right? How long do I stay in this? And that answer is really different for every person. There's no specific teaching that says this is how long you stay in a toxic, unhealthy relationship. But when you find yourself in a toxic, unhealthy situation that you can no longer feel safe and comfortable in, then it is a very beautiful practice to remove yourself from that situation. Again, not always possible. But when someone or people, again, just looking at the way the question was phrased, are constantly letting you down, begin to recognize, are these people that I even need in my life anymore? It's perfectly okay to remove yourself from a situation where you feel you are being let down. If you're not able to just recognize that what their actions are, their suffering, and that it's not about you, then you ask yourself, well, can I remove myself from this situation? And if you can, then you go through that process. If you can't, then you come back to what I talked about at the beginning, which is they have their own mess in their own life. And if you work on not putting so many expectations on others, then you can't be let down. And it doesn't mean, and this gets into the non-attachment teachings, but this doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't love them. I work with a lot of people. I build and create a lot of things. And this requires a lot of people to do a lot of stuff. So it's always easier when everybody does their job. But I find it healthier for me to not expect anyone to do what they're supposed to do. If they do it, phenomenal. If they don't do it, then we address them not doing it. But I don't lose sleep at night over whether someone is doing what they're supposed to do or not. And I found that to be incredibly helpful and beneficial for my own sanity and peace of mind, So I hope that's helpful, Amy, and to Amy's friend. If you have any additional thoughts or comments or questions on that or anything, feel free to chime in. But yeah, it's very liberating to not expect anything from anyone. And again, it doesn't mean you don't care, and it doesn't mean you don't have a right to be treated well. It just means you're no longer going to put that label on them of how you expect them and want them to be, because they're going to be how they're going to be. So Let's see. Oh, I just saw Benton's comment here. There are some aspects of being locked down that I will miss as we start to resume more normalcy in the future. Yeah, I think that's very common for a lot of people, especially if you're someone who loves, being kind of locked away a little bit. So there's, we will find what it is from this pandemic that can hopefully make us stronger, healthier, and more united. Um, just as humanity. Absolutely. Other thoughts, questions? Benton, I can tell you I will not miss staring at me while I lead these classes. It's quite funny because when I do them through YouTube, so it's just a little webcam here. So I see all of your names on the right, but all I see is me in the middle. So it's like I'm talking to myself. It's really kind of funny. Lisa, more comment, but we had a discussion a couple weeks ago about being present in the moment by just listening to what the person is saying and not thinking about what your next comment will be. Yeah, it's a great practice. For me, it's something I touch on a lot that, you know, I mean, even right there, right? So there's a perfect example. You said that a couple weeks ago, there was a discussion we had about just listening to the person is saying and not thinking about what your next comment will be. I read that and I immediately started to respond. So the practice would have been to read that and just sit with that for a little bit. But it is a great practice, and something I think we can all recognize that as we're having conversations with people, whether it's on the phone or even texting communication, it's the same thing. Someone sends a response, and very often we have this immediate kind of response back, and there's these messages flying back and forth, and often when people speak to us, we're not actually paying attention or listening or allowing what they're saying to sink in. We're just immediately going through our list in our head of what we want to respond with. So, but yeah, so I'm glad, and I've been applying it best I can, and it's helped me. Yeah, it's great. I think it's it's a very useful practice. For me, that was something that I learned a long time ago with this practice, and as someone who grew up and still talked a lot and never listened too much, that was a really wonderful training to just for me really to shut up and listen. So there's a practice that obviously we can't do it here, but I first did this years ago at the San Francisco Zen Center. And Tarbrock, see, Molly Tarbrock has a great talk on, deep listening. Beautiful. It's funny because our college, our alumni group wants to do that with our active chapters to actually set up a deep listening practice with them. But deep listening is so important. San Francisco Zen Center, years ago, I was there, and we did a meditation practice and I've actually run this with our college kids, where you kind of, you're all walking around in the meditation hall very slowly, just kind of a slow mixing of people. And then the bell will hit and you stop. And whoever is kind of situated closest to you, you will turn and face them. And you're silent and you just engage in eye contact with them. And you just hold that eye contact. And I think the instruction or the guidance, I've since done this many times, but I think that initial time that I did it, the instruction was just to kind of have this compassionate, loving thought in your mind and in your art, and to just try to express that through your eyes. And it was a great practice, to just silently engage with somebody who was basically a complete stranger, and just having that loving, compassionate mindset. And it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people, of course. And I think that's part of it as well, to just help break down the wall that we put up. I led this years ago, many times in prison. So it was a wonderful practice to have the guys sitting facing each other, and just silently gaze into each other's eyes, with a bunch of men in prison. That was a fascinating experience. So that's a great practice. Benton, you're a great and thoughtful listener. Well, yeah, that's only if you look at who I've been the last, 15 years. But there's 30 years before that would beg to differ with you. So I appreciate it, Benton. Yeah, I give myself a good amount of credit for how I am now, but I also am very honest with how I was before. So, but thanks, dude. All right, let's see. Last one here. Yes, examining one's own expectations and reactions is helpful. Listening openly, and resting in our real nature, i.e., what is genuine and authentic for us? Yeah. And words tend to, I think, muddy it sometimes. That's why I enjoyed the silent practice of just being with whatever was at that moment. So, very beautiful. Anything else anybody wants to share before we wrap up? Good thoughts, good questions. Amy, was that hopefully helpful for your friend, or Amy's friend? Was that hopefully helpful for you? You don't have to respond necessarily, but just know the thought is out there that hopefully your friend struggling with people letting her down is hopefully those thoughts were helpful. And one more thought on that kind of popped into my head was, I think it's important also to understand that there are, yes, our very conventional way of being with people is we have a expectation we set for them, and we want certain things from them, and we're constantly let down. That's just the way it is, and the way it's going to be for a long time. And I find it helpful in those moments to recognize that there's also a lot of wonderful people in the world. Some of them you may know, and some of them you've never even met yet, that won't let you down. So I find it helpful to, in working with people, and especially people who've gone through a lot of trauma, or even just everyday expectations of being let down a lot, to try not to create a story in our head that says, because these people have done this, or because this has happened, that means it's always going to be that way. Meaning that there will always be the people that let you down, and there will always be the people who are there for you. So, and that's really what Sangha community is about, is trying to find time and places in our lives where we spend it with people that that if we had expectations of them, that they wouldn't let us down, that they would be there for us. So a lot of good people out there also. Thanks, Amy. Good. Glad it was helpful. So we'll go ahead and we'll join palms. I'll close on that, and I have a couple announcements at the end. So we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice and meditation to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns or gurus or masters or teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We take our understanding of Buddhism and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So we closed, it's been over a year now, March 20th or March 12th of 2020. We closed our doors, so we moved everything online. Family groups, teenage group, college group, huge recovery sangha. So if you're battling addiction, there's always classes on that. We have our Monday through Friday in the morning sits, book studies, Pristine Mind, and Zen Seeds are both happening. Both books you can get at Buddha For You. Buddha For You is also closed, but as you know, the online store is available. New program to announce. It just went out on the Facebook stuff, which I'm very happy about. It'll go in a newsletter soon. But a new program we are doing called Hats for the Homeless, Knit and Sit. So we announced about 6 weeks ago that we were going to start building some virtual volunteer opportunities. And so this is one of them that's kind of bubbled up and has already really started rolling. So every Sunday at 3:00, we are meeting on Zoom. Stuff's on the website. If you go to the website, you can also see under programs, you'll see Hats for the Homeless, but we're making beanies. And then we are still working out the logistics of how they will be safely collected and safely transported. We're not doing any drop-offs at Temple. We're not meeting there, nothing. Temple's still fully closed. But there's a couple people who have a lot of experience and have been doing beanies for a while, and it's very easy to make them. So they're going to be teaching people on Sundays how to make them. There'll be a brief meditation. There'll be a sharing of how to make the beanies, and then you can all hang out and make beanies together online. We also created an Amazon wish list, so all the supplies, the yarn, and a few other tools necessary for that. But the process, I have not seen it yet, but apparently the process, you don't have to have any experience necessary to make this. You don't need to be a good knitter or anything like that. I don't know, I'll watch the first time they do it so I can explain it better. But it's really easy. So that's every Sunday at 3. I'm just thrilled for everybody that helped make that happen. So right on that, thank you all for being here. I wish you well, and we'll see you soon.